So here I am, 558 kilometers from home. I'm in Genting Highlands, just outside of Kuala Lumpur at a mountain resort. And this is the car that brought me here, the BYD Sealion 6. I still have a couple of days driving to go. And if you stick around, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. Okay, first up, this is a 5-seat, 5-door family SUV, and it's the first BYD passenger car with an engine under the bonnet, a 1.5-litre petrol that makes just 98 horsepower. Like other plug-in hybrids, the Sealion 6 has both a filler cap for fuel and a charging port for a BYD Blade battery. AC charging takes 8 hours and DC charging takes 1.3 hours. These orange cables are high voltage lines for the EV stuff you definitely do not want to touch. BYD calls its system DMI for dual mode intelligence. The idea is you have a short range EV for day-to-day driving and petrol power for long road trips like the one I'm on. Now then, BYD likes to do things big, so it invited the media on a long drive into Malaysia so we could all see what the Sealion 6 can do. We all gathered before the sun went up, went to top off the gas tank, and then set off on a super exciting adventure in a slow-moving convoy. But you're not interested in that, you want to know about this car. The first thing I want to tell you is that this is a Sealion 6, which is actually quite different from a Sealion 7. It's actually an older model, and I think it came out first sometime in late 2020, so it's already 5 years old and it has had a facelift. Now it does look like a BYD, you can tell from the kind of headlight shape. It's kind of the signature family headlight shape here, and it does look very much like the Sealion 7, except for one bit. This part over here lets you know that this car has a petrol engine. That's what this grille is for, because engines need a lot more cooling than electric motors. So over at the side, you've got what I like to call sort of contemporary handsome SUV. So it does look fairly generic from some angles, but it does have interesting elements that break up the sides of this car so it doesn't look so flabby. I'm talking about crease lines like here, and then you've got this line over here. It kind of slims down the car a little bit. And you can tell straight away that this is a crossover for family use. What you can't actually see is that there is a battery underneath the car, and that's for powering the EV mode. It kind of sits around about here to here. And what's interesting is that there is a combustion engine, so there is an exhaust pipe as well. Instead of running down the center of the car, it kind of goes past the electric battery on its way to the back of the car. Over the back, I think one of the most eye-catching elements for this car is the tail lights and the light bar that stretches clear across the back of the car. When you look at it up close, it is actually quite easy on the eye. You can tell that it's a crossover from the height of it. There's a lot going on up here, and yeah, it does sit a little bit high on this section of the car, doesn't it? But I think this is where it's starting to show its age, because if I stand here and just cover up the badge, there is some chance that you're not really sure what car you're looking at. Having said all that, I don't think this is a car that's supposed to sell on its styling. It's going to sell in its technology. But how does plug-in hybrid technology actually work? Well, I'm going to demonstrate with a friend of mine. This is Ben. Now, he's the kind of silent but very smooth type. So let's pretend he's an electric motor. Now, as an electric motor, his job is to push the car, and he can do that all by himself. Please demonstrate, Ben. Okay, that's not too bad. All right, let's call it good. Now, nominally, when his battery is full, he should be able to do that for more than 90 kilometers. Kind of covered 9 cm there, but when he's out of juice, that's when it's time for me, the filthy petrol engine, to shine. So my job in this case is to act as an energizer for Ben. I burn fuel, make electricity, and and energize Ben. And as you can see, okay, he's pushing the car again. All right, that'll do. And when I kick in and power Ben, well, the car can go for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers without stopping. There's a third mode though, and that's when we want full power, and that's when the petrol engine and Ben, the electric motor, kind of work together to give maximum force to the car. So let's demonstrate, Ben. Yeah, okay. Whew. So as you can see, maximum power, the car goes away, and oh shit! Okay guys, first impression, it feels like an electric car. I mean, I guess that's because it is a battery and a motor that's driving this car right now, but the engine is kind of distant, and honestly speaking, I can't really tell if it's switched on. Sometimes you can tell if you're not at idle and you know it's switched on to charge the battery and you're not moving, or if you give it maximum power and yeah, okay, then you can hear it kick in to really push electricity into the battery and the motor. But otherwise, yeah, it's so distant and quiet that you don't really know if it's there, and that really helps this car feel like an electric vehicle. You can actually force it into EV mode with this switch over here, and that will default to the battery power, but it's better to just leave it if you ask me. And you know what, it might be a little bit confusing to think like, okay, I've got a motor, I've got petrol engine, how do I juggle those two things? But the car actually does it for you automatically. So if you want to enjoy this car and what it has to offer, I think it's just best to leave it in hybrid electric mode and let it do its own thing. And as I'm rolling along, there is a gauge that tells me if I'm driving in an economical way or whether I'm nudging the power band and how much electricity I'm regenerating as well. Now I gotta say, comfort is high in this car. I mean, it's quiet. The suspension is firm sometimes, but it's really not harsh, and it does settle down nicely even on bumpy Malaysian roads. And you know, we've been driving this car for days, and I gotta say, I've been spending sort of hours and hours behind the wheel, but these long drives are no problem in this car. Long distance cruising has really been a breeze. So this car really is set up for comfort. Now let's talk about performance. I have 218 horsepower or PS at my disposal, along with 300 Newton meters of torque. So I'm gonna go for it. Oh, I forgot. You actually only have full power when you engage the sport mode. So yeah, okay. So 0 to 100 takes 8.5 seconds in this car. And I gotta be honest, it doesn't actually feel very quick, but it doesn't feel slow either. So I think in terms of day-to-day driving, I'll be quite happy with this amount of performance. But you know what? It feels a little bit like the Sealion 7. Now, that car is very, very fast, especially in the dual motor version, but it actually isn't very exciting to drive. And this car kind of feels similar. I think it's more of a cruiser than a sporty SUV. It actually doesn't have much steering feel, and it doesn't feel like it has particularly sticky tires. But I have to say, it is an easy car to drive, and that is thanks to all these driver assistance systems I have. The most important one, of course, are the cameras that are going to keep me from curbing my wheels. I also have blind spot monitors, very handy if I want to change lanes safely. And I actually have adaptive cruise control, which lets me lock onto the car in front and also keeps the car in lane for me. So, you know, for long driving days, I can actually drive along with very little effort. I don't use the pedals, and I just have the lightest touch on the steering wheel. The controls are actually quite light, but they are well calibrated. I would say the steering, even though it doesn't offer much feedback, is actually pretty linear. And the same goes for the brakes. In some hybrid cars, well, there's two braking systems, right? You've got regenerative braking, and then you've got the friction brakes, and you've got one pedal to kind of blend the two. Some hybrid cars don't do it all that well, but in this car, the braking actually feels quite natural. So let's talk about range for a second. On paper, this car should be able to cover 92 kilometers on a single charge. The system never lets the battery drop to zero, and I think that's in order to kind of preserve a little bit of power for things like overtaking, or you know, when you're really in a hurry, and probably also to extend the life of the battery. Still, 92 kilometers should be enough for 2 days of motoring in Singapore for the average driver. And during that time, it's going to feel like you're driving an electric car. But you know, of course, the more often you can charge this car, then the more often you'll be able to utilize the plug-in technology. You might be wondering about the differences between the Sealion 6 and the Sealion 7. That's the full electric vehicle from BYD, similar size. Well, this is actually going to be slightly more expensive. Now, the prices are not out yet. I've been driving the car before its launch in Singapore, but I estimate that this will cost around $210,000 with COE, or slightly more than the basic Sealion 7. Now, the reason it costs more? Well, here in Singapore, full electric cars get up to $40,000 worth of rebates from the government. But as a plug-in hybrid, the Sealion 6 only gets a rebate of $2,500. So there is a $37,500 difference in the amount of rebates you get from these cars. There is actually a full electric version of the Sealion 6 in other markets, but this is the car that BYD has chosen to be its plug-in warrior. So it's the one that is exporting to markets like ours. Now, by rights, this should be a cheaper car than the Sealion 7 because it is actually slightly less premium. Let me show you what I mean. By the way, if you are finding this video remotely useful, please consider subscribing. We are a relatively new channel, and it would really help us out. And of course, if you do have questions about this car or any other new car in Singapore, feel free to drop me a line at the number below. I will do my best to help you out. So let's take a tour of this Sealion 6. It's actually rather different from the Sealion 7, I have to say. This panel here, for example, bit of mood lighting underneath, nice touch. It does feel like a different car. The upholstery is different. In this car, it is, I would say, artificial leather, whereas you get Nappa leather, nice and soft, in the Sealion 7. A couple of things missing as well. I don't have head-up display, and even though I have powered seats, there's actually no memory function. So there are features that would be nice to have, which are missing from this car. See a difference in the sound system as well. This has an infinity speaker here. I think it's Dyne Audio in the Sealion 7, but you know what? My ears are not refined enough to tell. So this is very standard BYD stuff here. I've got very clear and easy to read displays, and of course the classic BYD thing is that I can rotate the screen. Ooh, let me just get rid of this. Yeah, that was so satisfying. Okay, I'll just stick this here. I'm going to put this back here and give you a little tour of what else we have. Couple of wireless charging trays, useful to have. I really like the fact that you have proper aircon vents that you can just point with your hands, not the sort of invisible ones that are starting to creep into cars. BYD, please keep these. And you know what? You do have regular controls, like I think that a gear lever and things like a start-stop button are things that you don't actually need in an electric car, but I think they're still nice to have. You have access to all the important driver controls here, but I do think this hazard switch is a bit of a faff to get to. It should be closer to me, or it should be more prominent. A couple of cup holders and quite a deep compartment over here actually, so you can store stuff like my walkie-talkie in this area over here. And I gotta say that even though it's not lavishly equipped, I do have important things like instant access to a 3D camera. So let me just do the 3D mode. It's not working now because the doors are open, but look, the screens are very sharp and the cameras are pretty high res. That has been very, very useful driving this car. Of course, the display is fairly snappy, and once you get used to it, I think you're going to find that it's quite easy to use. One thing that struck me is that this is obviously a family car, but it does have its playful touches. So I'm talking about things like this contrast stitching. If you have a look at these seats over here, they're actually quite sportily shaped. And I do like this stuff, like this piping and this mix of brown and black. It may be a family car, but there is a little bit of a sense of fun when you climb on board. If you are interested in this car because you're a family man, well, let me take you on a quick tour of the back. For a start, I've got a nice flat floor. It's kind of interesting that they've managed to do that, even though this car has a petrol engine. Usually there's a hump here for things like the exhaust pipe. Again, that's routed along the side, so maybe that's why we've managed to keep the floor flat over here. In terms of what we got for accommodation, well, you've seen the center armrest, a couple of drinks holders here, pretty standard. Now these are super important, of course, for our climate, rear aircon vents, although there is no temperature control, so mom and dad have final say in terms of how cool the children are back here. Little compartment over here, I don't know what I would put there. Charging ports as well, one USB-A, one USB-C, so you don't actually have to choose. Overall, I would say that there is a feeling of space in here. One of the reasons for that is there is this glass roof over my head, which seems to be an electric vehicle must these days, or a must have. But you know, it gets hot sometimes, so I'm pleased to report that there is a cover that I can slide over my head in order to keep things cool. In terms of space, well, you can see that I do have a lot of room above my head, lots of leg room as well, so it is a very roomy car. It actually feels like it doesn't give too much away from the Sealion 7. And I'll show you a trick. If I want to recline these seats, or indeed put them more upright, I can do that by pulling a strap. That's the maximum recline position. The reason for that is, well, it lets you kind of trade a bit of passenger space for luggage space. Can't actually move these seats back and forward like you can in some SUVs, but overall I would say that this car is pretty well set up for family use, even if your kids are all playing for the NBA. Righty-ho, if I know one thing about families, it's that they are messy and they come with a lot of stuff, so it's worth looking at the boot here. It's rated for 574 litres back here, which is decent, but I have to say, like, sort of visually, I'm not seeing that this is a particularly huge trunk. There is some space underneath here, but not a whole lot, I gotta say. I did notice that you can actually push this down, so you lose the flush floor, but you get a little bit of extra loading height. And of course, if you want to expand the loading space, you can fold these seats down. You just have to do it from the sides of the car instead of back here. I have noticed that there are a couple of other tricks missing. There's a nice luggage cover, for example, but I don't think there's anywhere to stow it. Like some cars allow you to stow it under the floor. Here, you either have to find somewhere at home to leave it, or just chuck it in with the rest of your stuff if you want to use it or not use it. There's also like no hooks for groceries and things like that, and I think that it's missing a couple of Little tricks that would make this a little bit more versatile and more practical, but I have to say that overall I am impressed by one thing. It doesn't seem to sacrifice any boot space to batteries. The earlier generation of PHEVs actually lost some boot space because they would put the batteries here, but because for this car it's under the passenger compartment, well, this boot is pretty much as big as it's ever going to be. So it's been a lovely 3 days behind the wheel of this BYD Sealion 6, and according to the trip computer I've covered something like 716 kilometers. I do have something like 115 kilometers left in the tank, so my total predicted range is just over 830 kilometers. A little bit disappointing. I was so sure that this car would be able to deliver at least 1,000 kilometers from a single tank, but I do blame some spirited driving up and down the mountains, especially by my colleagues. Still, I've had a lot of fun and I've been to lots of places with this car. I've had a durian feast, I went to Batu Caves, I went up and down Genting Highlands twice. And I did all that in a car that feels like an electric car to drive. I didn't have to stop at a petrol station, let alone a charging station. So I can see a very clear use case for this car. I think it's for anyone who wants to feel like they're driving an EV but isn't quite sure that they're ready to make the switch and leave petrol power behind forever. Or maybe you want to drive an electric car on a day-to-day basis, but you want something with more range for weekends when you go to Malacca to play golf with your buddies. Either way though, I think that in order to make the most of this package, it would help if you had access to regular charging, because in order to drive it like an EV most of the time, you really should charge it every other day, even though you don't have to. Otherwise, you might actually be better off with a regular hybrid, something like a Toyota RAV4 or a Nissan X-Trail, or if you want something smaller, the Kia Niro Hybrid can comfortably crack 1,000 kilometers on a single tank. Now, there's never been a successful plug-in hybrid in Singapore. Last year, the whole market sold something like 200 PHEVs. But if any brand can crack the PHEV market, I think it would be BYD. It is the #1 brand in Singapore with an all-electric lineup until now. So maybe this will be the car that provides that breakthrough for plug-in hybrids. My job as the petrol engine is to energize Ben when he runs out of battery. So Ben, I'm gonna energize you. So okay, now you're energized. And yeah, use the tickling power to